Sup, Snakes? If you couldn't tell by the screen here, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different, but there's a lot of confusion whenever we talk about Xbox, Microsoft, Zenimax, Bethesda Softworks, all these different things, and like who owns what, what's a subsidiary, what's separate, who's the publisher, what's the actual game studio. So today, we're going to be exploring this little wheel right here and like the corporate structure of all of this stuff, because it's complicated, and you know, Xbox is becoming a little bit of a mega corporation. They're getting a lot of them, you know. But we're going to explore this because there's so much confusion, especially within the Bethesda community, because, you know, Bethesda is now owned by Microsoft. It's a little confusing, just a little confusing. So we're going to talk about it today. And we're going to explore it a little bit more, try to understand it a little bit more, and kind of break down that confusing corporate structure of these things. So, without further ado, watch 2 of my videos. I'm so close to getting monetized, y'all, and let's get into it. I love my intro, man. I love it. Free music from the app that I used to edit, or used to. I don't edit that much anymore. Anyway, this is what we drinking. We drinking this while we make this video. Protein, trying to bulk up. It's disgusting. No, actually, this one's not that bad because they don't try and sweeten it with like weird fruit like a lot of the other ones do. But I was talking to friends. I've made a lot of videos. I've been, you know, explaining a lot of things. I do a lot of news too. And a lot of times people don't understand like what Bethesda is, what Bethesda Softworks is versus what Bethesda Game Studios is, and does Zenimax even have a role anymore? All these different things that are so like tied into creating like news content about these different companies that I was like, okay, we gotta like delve into the corporate structure a little bit more, understand it on a deeper level. So that's what we're doing in today's video. I know that might seem random. It's probably a little random for my channel, but there's a lot of like acquisition stuff happening, and I'm sure continue to try and acquire things Microsoft wise. I think it's something we need to break down a little bit just to understand. So if you've ever been curious about the corporate structure, we're going to try our best to understand it in today's video. Let's do it. Okay, so I found this wheel on Reddit that seems pretty accurate. Like, I'm pretty pleased with it. But it's cool because it also has like the acquisition dates, which is super interesting. So if I click into it, obviously, you know, we have Xbox Game Studios. I want to like zoom in more centered. It's not letting me. That's fine. So we have Xbox Game Studios, and then all underneath it, all these different subsidiaries and like the dates they were acquired, which is super cool. I like that way of breaking it down. So, you know, stuff back in the 80s estimated, like stuff like that. So Xbox owns a crap ton of studios, like so many. And obviously if you're a Fallout fan or a Bethesda fan, like what pertains most to Fallout is Obsidian and then Zenimax. So this is so confusing. So in 2020, Xbox acquired Zenimax, right? Big. It was a huge acquisition. It was incredibly expensive. It's super complicated. And there's a lot under Zenimax as well. So Tango Works, Bethesda, obviously a big one, Arcane, like so many different things. And then obviously within this, we get to see like the games themselves. So, you know, Fallout, all these different franchises, Doom, etc. So there's so much under here, and I felt like it was so confusing. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, some people don't even fundamentally understand that Obsidian and Bethesda are like 2 different things. They worked together to make New Vegas, but they're still separate game studios and were under a separate parent company. Now, obviously, they're not because they're both owned by Xbox, which was super confusing for people. But remember, Fallout New Vegas came out in 2010. Obsidian was acquired in 2018, and then ZeniMax was acquired in 2020. Right? Okay. So it's a little bit of clarification. Separate studios, guys. Still same parent company, which gives a lot of people hope about, you know, getting a new New Vegas sequel or whatever, or remaster. Just important to know. So I also went into Crunchbase. I'm not super sure about this website, but it was kind of breaking down some of the corporate structure, like some of the acquisitions, all these things. So I clicked on Zenimax, obviously acquired by Microsoft in 2020. It was an incredibly expensive purchase for them. They're located in Maryland. So it listed 2 sub-organizations within this. So Zenimax Online Studios, which is like ESO, things like that, and then Bethesda Softworks, another subsidiary. So we can click into Zenimax Online Studios. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a little confusing. So you get like the bare bones info about it. But yes, Elder Scrolls Online is one of the big things that they do. Separate, but still under ZeniMax. Confusing, I know, it is for me too. And then within that, we have Bethesda Softworks. It's going to get more confusing from here, y'all. So this is the publisher. Key thing here, Bethesda Softworks is the publisher. It isn't the game studio. And I know it's confusing because there's Bethesda Game Studios and Bethesda Softworks. That's the publisher, right? They publish the games. And Bethesda Softworks publishes a lot of games, as we saw in the previous wheel, like everything under the ZeniMax arm, more or less, is published under Bethesda Softworks as well. Like, it'll say both of them in the intro of the game, etc. So within Bethesda Softworks, there's actually like quite a bit of like different studios that are under them. I know, guys, it's super confusing. I think the key thing to remember is within ZeniMax, it's Bethesda Softworks and then ZeniMax Online. Those are separate, but in there, we got to look at Bethesda, not game studios. Different thing. That's the specific studio that makes the games, but Bethesda Softworks would kind of be lumped in with ZeniMax here as the publisher. So that's a big thing that seems to confuse gamers overall. Like Bethesda Softworks and Bethesda Game Studios, while Bethesda Game Studios is under Bethesda Softworks, they're like different things, right? So like you got to look at these game studios as their own. They're all each individual studios that are published by Bethesda. So Arcane, like all these different ones you see on this wheel, different studios. So a lot of times like games will come out with that Bethesda Softworks logo on it. And a lot of people are like, oh, Bethesda. Like people, obviously it's kind of a meme to complain about Bethesda, but there's a lot of like weird complaints that I see that are directed. They're like, oh, it's Bugthesda. Now, if you're making the meme of Bugthesda, that would be super specific to Bethesda Game Studios. Because, like, under this list, you have Elder Scrolls, you have Fallout, games that are, like, known and buggy. And when you think of Bugthesda, you're thinking of Bethesda Game Studios, not necessarily Bethesda Softworks. Because, like, a lot of people forget that Bethesda Softworks publishes a lot of different games, has a lot of different studios under them. So, when all of the controversy with Redfall happened, a lot of people are like, oh, it's Bethesda, but it's like, those are different studios, different teams, same publisher. Does that make any sense? Like, it's interesting to hear the discourse around these different games and things like that, and then blame it on Bethesda, as people like to say, because I'm not like being a Bethesda, obviously, unlike Bethesda, obviously, I'm going to defend them to some extent, but you got to remember that Bethesda Game Studios and Bethesda Softworks, 2 different things, y'all. 2 different things. Don't mince words. Don't confuse the two separate things. Now, another interesting thing that I see happen is like blaming bugs on Bethesda with like specifically Fallout New Vegas. Now, obviously, they had to go off of the files and stuff. Like how New Vegas was made is it took Fallout 3, the assets, the engine, all that, and kind of reskinned it, essentially, for lack of a better way of saying it, and made a new game. And people blame Bethesda on that, or some people even forget that Bethesda is involved in any way. They're like, oh my god, if Bethesda gets their hands on New Vegas, blah, blah, blah. Like, I see these kind of comments all the time, and it's, remember, they needed Bethesda Game Studios specific assets to make Fallout New Vegas. Like, New Vegas wouldn't exist without Bethesda Game Studios. I know, that's crazy to think. It would have been Project Van Buren, Fallout 3, the original, not New Vegas. So, I hope that helps. I see a ton of confusion all the time about this. And yes, it's confusing. So, but like, they're different things under the same publisher, essentially, is what you need to remember. They're all also under Xbox Game Studios now, too. So, it's interesting too because there's a little bit more division when it comes to Xbox's acquisition of like Zenimax within that, because obviously Zenimax has the online and then it separately has Bethesda Softworks. There's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of crossover, but what you really need to remember is it's like Xbox, Phil Spencer, head, Microsoft above that, big. And then we go down into Zenimax, and then we go down into Bethesda Softworks, and then we go, like it is super confusing, and I agree. But just remember, when we're talking about Bethesda content, when we're talking about Bethesda Softworks, that's the publisher. When we're talking about Bethesda Game Studios, that's a specific game studio that is published by Bethesda Softworks. And, like that's also like more of their corporate arm and their promoting arm and stuff like that, as far as I understand it. It is confusing though, and I get it. I get that it's confusing. But I think it is important to know these differences because when you say Bethesda, what do you mean? You got to be specific in your language on that. So if I ever say Bethesda, I'm usually referring to Bethesda Softworks, and if I'm ever saying Bethesda Game Studios, that's what I'm referring to. So here on out on my channel, we have a better understanding of all this confusing corporation stuff. Hopefully it will clarify things for the future, but I know there's a lot of confusion around this. So I thought maybe make a quick video on it. And that's what we did. So thank you so much for tuning in. I am so close to getting monetized. Go watch 2 of my videos, like them, comment, do all the things. I'm very close to the marker, not to get ad revenue, but to get supers and donations and support and all that through the channel. And then I have a little bit more way to go to get monetized through ad revenue. I don't know why they make it so hard, but it is what it is. So if you ever see an ad on my channel, I ain't making anything from that yet. All right. Thank you so much for watching and have a safe and wonderful day in the wasteland, my kitties. Peace.